Greetings everyone, I am Dr. J. For a while now my focus with this channel has been on reviewing old games which I haven't played before, as I enjoy looking back at what once was and seeing how far we've come since. However, as much fun as it can be to look back on older games, it's also good to keep up with what's new, so whenever I want to talk about a game I'm enjoying, there might be a video for it. In this case, let's start with something that I've been playing on a pseudo-regular basis, Oxygen Not Included. For the unfamiliar, this game is a survival/colony management game by the same guys who made Don't Starve. You start with a number of people who appear stranded in an unknown area, and need to find a way to survive within it. To do so, you'll need to spend time learning more about what you can do, properly allocate resources for your people, which by the game's name includes basic things like how much oxygen you have. When I first sat down to play this was a couple of months ago, just when I had come back from spring break. My tax return was about to come in, so I decided to pull the trigger on it and ended up spending literally 7 hours straight playing it. I'm not entirely sure why it grabbed me so well, but this turned into one of those rare games that I have to basically perform an exorcism to keep from consuming my life. To my knowledge, the only games I've ever had to do that for were FTL and Baldur's Gate 2, and if that isn't a ringing endorsement, I don't know what is. I think when push comes to shove, it's because it has that just one more turn element that a lot of addicting games have, where you're constantly trying to improve and progress within the area you have to work with. You might finish setting up some oxygen generation, but then you have to make sure that your food supplies are okay, but then you start running through water faster, so you want to start looking for geysers and polluted water to funnel into your system. And then when you're doing that, you can have someone start making it look better by attempting to be an artist. There are a lot of interconnected systems within the game to where it's daunting to learn at first, but that's where the real meat of the game lies. It's all a matter of experimentation, figuring out what works, trying to see how long you can last, and having a good time doing it all the while. Every time you enter into the game, there will be a somewhat modified scenario where the people you periodically receive will be different, the starting resources will be in different locations, and the area beyond your starting one may be spread out differently. Figuring out a way to make a workable colony, at least from my experience, doesn't seem all that different each time, but always has its own little issues that you really want to iron out before leaving, which obviously never happens given just how much there is to do within the game. With all of that, you end up with a fair number of interesting interactions, not just with the various systems such as oxygen, water, food, and so on, but also with how you ensure that everything is handled. For instance, in order to ensure that your people stay clean, you will need to create bathrooms. Initially, these will be outhouses that end up creating polluted dirt, which can be composted to make fertilizer. The polluted oxygen created by the polluted dirt can be annoying to deal with, but having an air purifier next to it can be a big help in that regard. However, once you've gotten your water resources figured out, you can use said water to handle your bathrooms, as while doing so pollutes the water as you would expect, said polluted water can be used to make fertilizer, or if you need it purified, there is a building to do that as well. The same process allows you to make showers as well, which helps keep your people from getting sick even if they're going into a place that has a lot of polluted water or oxygen to deal with. What jobs are available can also be divided up, which isn't a big deal to start with but can get a little intricate later on. At some point you can end up with more than a few people just running around trying to get resources to where they need to be, others dedicated to digging out resources and hollowing out rooms, and so on and so forth. Perhaps the most important job is the research required to get all of the buildings you want. So far it looks like the research is relatively limited, as I've been able to get almost everything relatively quickly, but that might be due to what's on offer right now. This is still very much a game that is in early access, and there are definitely limits to how long your colony can last no matter how good you are at gaming the system. To some extent though, I think that's kind of the point, to play many different colonies and try different things each time. It's less a matter of finding the strategy that lasts forever, and more about trying to find the way to make it last just a little bit longer. Thus far I haven't seen what happens when things get really bad in a colony, as I've tended to bail out when I see things going south faster than I can fix it. Fortunately, this is a Klei game, and they definitely have a well-earned fanbase that is surprisingly welcome for what I've seen of it. The art style definitely bears its studio's mark, as it looks perfectly adorable when it needs to, with everything being distinct and colorful despite the reality of what you're actually trying to make work. Now that I think of it, I wonder what it would look like if the game had an aesthetic like this War of Mine. I'll have to see what the modding community looks like once the game is released. Regardless, that covers most of what I have to say about the game, so since it's still in early access, I should try and offer some criticism. Honestly though, I'm not sure what more needs to be added. Perhaps I'm simply not creative enough to think on how to expand the systems in place, but for what I enjoy in these kind of games, pretty much everything is here that I need if I want to sit back and waste a few hours. Maybe some more tangible effects involving pressure would be interesting to see, especially since if someone walks into a near vacuum, a lack of oxygen is the least of your concerns, but that's all I can think of right now. I will say though that the amount of memory that's required later in the game can be staggering. Even with my 8 gigs of RAM, when I got to that stage, I would exit to the main menu or quit the game and have to wait a few minutes just for everything to be properly deallocated, even if I force closed it from Task Manager. Based on my computer science coursework, I'm pretty sure that it's forcing a ton of other processes to give up memory so that it can keep running, which means even after it's been deallocated, all of that has to be pulled back in from the hard drive. And since I don't use an SSD, that can take a while. I don't know for sure what's taking up all the memory, but even if that's somewhat annoying, the game does seem to hold steady until it gets to that later stage, in which case it starts stuttering but isn't impossible to deal with. Outside of that, it is a game I can definitely recommend at this stage of development, though I'm not sure how much more I personally will be playing. At this point, given how busy my summer will be, and especially given all the games I want to play when I'm not busy, I'll probably wait until after the game is released before I dive back in. That way, once everything that can be improved is improved, I can end up falling in love with it again. The only question right now is whether my resolve will hold despite the agricultural update coming soon. That's all I have for this video. Thank you all for watching. Please like and share this if you find it deserving, and subscribe to this channel for more video game critique as well as other content posted on a not-so-regular basis. Let me know how uncritical I was and how much I missed out on talking about in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.